In the last 20 years, the Bloomington population has remained somewhat stagnant. In 2000, there were 2,500 residents. Now that number is closer to just 2,000. Despite the lack of growth in numbers, residents are faced with a difficult choice in May, whether to incorporate or not. 70% of the community is made up of cabins for rent, but it wasn't always like this. Henry Mercado is an 87-year-old resident of Bloomington. He was a young child growing up in the community in the 1940s. He says most of the town's former landmarks are now where the cabins for rent stand today.
Well, the Bloomington that I remember, I used to know all the people around town. And now I don't hardly 99% of the people I don't know. They're from living in their hoods.
Earlier this year, the leadership behind the cabins for rent attempted to get incorporation on the November ballot, excluding properties they don't own from the proposed city boundary lines. The community pushed back, and now there is a new incorporation effort led by the community, which would include all of Bloomington. The cabins are owned by a slew of limited liability company structures that are frequently dissolved and reestablished with different names throughout the years. Earlier this month, there was a multi-agency raid of the community's water department office, a building owned by one of the various companies that own the cabins. Longtime residents of Bloomington say these raids are nothing new.
I see a lot of raids, a lot of FBI things, and it saddens me to see that today. But I'm glad the presence is here, so those things are taken care of.
Tiki Vengler says she used to ride her horse all over Bloomington as a teenager. She says her brother used to live in one of the cabins. He shared a water heater with 3 other units.
He would come to my house to shower a lot of times because he had no hot water.
Don Reyes, a 71-year-old resident, says he remembers when Bloomington had a pharmacy, a movie theater, and a cafe.
Back in them days, that's where the fun was, go to the movies,
Reyes built a 5-bedroom home for his family, where he still lives with his wife, but his children have grown and left town. While he's not sure if they'll move back to take care of the home he built, Reyes says he hopes it stays in the family. With the possibility of incorporation, Reyes says he hopes it leads to city parks and more amenities for children to enjoy. Danny Garcia, Victoria County Commissioner for Precinct 1, describes his childhood in Bloomington as something out of a magazine.
So my fondest memories were that, like a Mayberry town, running around town, riding your bike wherever you wanted, walking to school.
Michael Monroy, who moved away but then came back to Bloomington, got emotional when thinking about how his parents would react if they saw Bloomington now.
If Mom and Daddy were still alive, it's just a shame.
Monroy says as long as the original families of Bloomington stay together, they'll have a fighting chance of taking back their town.
We are all kin, we're a close family, and we help each other. That's the way we're going to survive. We need to build a stronger Bloomington.
Sticking together is all they can do until the ballots are cast on May 3rd. Carolina Astran, KAVU TV, 25 News Now.